Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Mo Money with you from the Mo Money Sports Network, the sports network for the sports fan. And I'm back at it. So here we go. Today's video is about Larry Bird, who walked into the NBA, a skinny kid from French Lick, Indiana, and walked out one of the greatest players in the sport has ever seen. But here is what most people never talk about. The real story behind how he got there is almost too hard to believe. Picture this: a teenager loses his father due to unaliving himself just days after his parents' divorce. He drops out of college and goes back home, works on a garbage truck, and somehow transforms all of the pain into a career that would define an entire era of basketball. If there's if that does not get your attention, I don't know what will. Today, we are going deep on Larry Bird, not just the highlights, not just the trophies, but the full arc, one of the most compelling careers in sports history. By the end of the video, you are going to understand why Bird is not just a basketball legend, he is something much more than that. Don't forget to like and subscribe while you're here. And let us start from the very beginning because context matters enormously here. Larry Joe Bird was born on December 7th, 1956, West Baden Springs, Indiana, which sits right next to French Lick. This is a small town, America, at its most quintessential, a place where life moved slowly and opportunities were not exactly plentiful. Bird was the fourth of six children in a family that struggled financially throughout his life and childhood. Money was always tight, and that created a kind of hunger in him that never really went away. Don't forget to, like I said again, like and subscribe while you're here at the channel. Basketball became his escape. He would spend hours every single day on the outdoor courts, shooting in the cold, shooting in the heat, shooting till his hands could barely function. This was not structured practice with coaches and drills. This was a kid alone with a ball, obsessively working on every possible angle, every possible scenario he might face in a real game. That level of self driven dedication is something you genuinely cannot manufacture. He was recruited out of high school to Indiana University, where legendary coach Bob Knight had built an absolute powerhouse program. Bird enrolled in 1974, but the size and pace of a major university campus overwhelmed him. He lasted less than a month before heading back to French Lick. This is the part of the story that gets glossed over constantly, but it matters. Bird went home, married his high school girlfriend, took a job driving a garbage truck for the city, and seemed like he might disappear into small town life entirely. Could you imagine if that happened to Larry Bird, if he just had vanished? Then his father died. Joe Bird had struggled with personal difficulties for years, and after the divorce from Larry's mother, he unalived himself in February 1975. That loss shattered the family. Larry Bird, also at a crossroads, had to figure out what he was actually going to do with his life. Within months, he enrolled at a small school called Northwood Institute before eventually landing at Indiana State University in Terre Haute, playing for the Indiana State Sycamores. Indiana was not exactly a basketball powerhouse when Bird arrived, but what happened over the next few years was genuinely remarkable. Bird averaged numbers that seemed almost fictional for the era, scoring, rebounding, passing at levels that put him completely in a category of his own among college players. By his senior season in 1978 and 79, Indiana State went on to a historic run that culminated in a national championship game appearance. That game was against the Michigan State Spartans and the young Irvin Magic Johnson. drew the highest television ratings in the NCAA tournament history at the time. It was also the beginning of one of the greatest rivalries in professional sports that we had ever witnessed. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson saved the NBA, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Bird was actually drafted by the Boston Celtics in the first round of the 1978 draft, but he chose to stay and finish his degree at Indiana State, which was an incredible unusual decision at the time. The Celtics essentially held their rights and waited. When he finally signed in 1979, it was for a contract that made him the highest paid rookie in the league up to that point in history. The pressure was enormous. The expectations were enormous. Bird handled all of it with a kind of quiet confidence that would become his defining characteristic. He made the Celtics great and was part of that five Hall of Famer team. When what happened in Boston over the next decade was nothing short of a basketball revolution. The Celtics had been struggling before Bird arrived. In his first season, he led the team from a losing record all the way to one of the best records in the entire league. He won Rookie of the Year. Almost, he immediately established himself as a legitimate star. But Bird was not interested in being a star in the traditional sense. He was obsessed with winning. His style of play was unlike anything people had seen before. Bird was not the most athletic. He was not the best player on the floor, but he was slower than most of the perimeter players and could not jump as high, which made this extremely awkward as he beat most defenders and going to overwhelm anyone with raw tools. Instead, he weaponized his basketball IQ in ways that still make analysts shake their heads. Decades later, his court vision was extraordinary. His shooting was precise from almost anywhere on the floor. His passing was creative and selfless, and his competitive drive was genuinely frightening. He also, when Magic Johnson, oh, well, I'll get to that later. The trash talk was a whole separate dimension. Bird would tell defenders exactly what he was going to do to them before doing it, then do it, then remind them that he had told them it was coming, which made Larry Bird great, by the way. He made opponents feel psychologically defeated before the games were even close to over. Opponents, teammates, coaches, virtually everyone who played or against or alongside Bird said the same thing. He made you uncomfortable because you always felt like he was one step ahead. This is very true. The Celtics won three NBA championships during the Bird era in 1981, 84, and 86. The 86 team, in particular, frequently discussed as one of the greatest teams ever assembled. Bird was the centerpiece, surrounded by Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, and other elite contributors. The roster's combined skill, toughness, and collective intelligence in the ways that even elite modern teams struggle to replicate. Bird was won three consecutive MVP awards from 84 through 86, which put him in extraordinarily rare company. During that stretch, he was widely considered the best player on the planet, which is a remarkable thing to say considering that Magic Johnson and the young Michael Jordan were both active during this time in the league. The debates around the era are still alive today and will probably never fully be resolved, which is exactly how legendary rivalries should work. Man, the 80s and 90s in the NBA were absolutely great. Off the court, Bird was famously private and uncomfortable with celebrity. He did not seek out endorsements or media attention the way modern athletes do. He drove himself to games, showed up early, stayed late, and treated basketball more like a working class craft than a glamorous profession. His French Lick roots never left him. That blue collar identity was not a marketing strategy, it was genuinely who he was. and Bird always took that seriously. The back problem started accumulating in the mid 1980s. Bird played through significant physical pain for years, which only added to the respect his peers had for him. He had bone spurs removed from both his heels at one point. Eventually, his back deteriorated to the point where it fundamentally changed what he could do on the court. The final season where a diminished version of Larry Bird from his peak, but even that diminished version was still better than most players in the league. And he really retired. He retired in 1992 after the season, but not before one final magical chapter. The 1992 Olympics brought together the first American team composed of professional NBA players, otherwise known as the Dream Team, and Bird was named to that team along with Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, and other all time greats. It was his storybook send off with Bird in his declining health, representing his country one last time alongside the friends and rivals who had defined his era. I tell you, that was a great thing. And if you want to know more about that, Magic and Bird, the Courtship Revivals, is a great story. After retirement, Bird transitioned into coaching and front office work. He coached the Indiana Pacers and won Coach of the Year in 1998, which made him one of a very small number of people who won both MVP and Coach of the Year awards. He later served as team president for the Pacers and oversaw a rebuilding period that showed his basketball mind was just as sharp in the front office context as it had been on the hardwood. So, what do we actually take from all of this? Here is what I keep coming back to. Larry Bird's career fundamentally is a story about what happens when extraordinary will meet ordinary circumstance. He did not come from privilege. He did not have the physical gifts that most top athletes at his level possessed. He came from a broken family in a small Indiana town. He dropped out of school. He worked on a garbage truck that then he willed himself into becoming one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history. That is Larry Bird. And then that trajectory matters beyond basketball. It is a case study in obsessive preparation, in using adversity as fuel rather than excuse, in showing up every single day with something to prove, even when you have already proven everything imaginable. The next time someone tells you that talent is the primary factor separating people from average, great people from average ones, think about that kid in French Lick shooting jump shots alone in the cold, grieving a father he had lost too soon, building something out of nothing. That is Larry Bird's story. And honestly, it never gets old. And that's a great thing. And if you want to get more in depth on some of these and hear the stories from Bird himself, check out, like I said earlier, Courtship of Rivals, Bird versus Magic. There's a story in there where they film a commercial and they go to Larry Bird's house because Larry Bird wasn't going to go to LA to film it. So they go down to French Lick and there's a point in there they're gonna break and Bird and Magic say, "Oh, I'm gonna go to my trailer for lunch," and Bird said, "No, my mother has prepared lunch at the house," and they have a great day. And then Larry Bird's mom tells Magic that Magic is his favorite player. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And until next time, may your ego come from a place that keeps you humble. I'm Mo Money. Mamba out.